Hands up! Venezuela! Hands up! Venezuela! Hands up! Venezuela! Hands up! Venezuela! Hands up! Venezuela!
We just had a couple of people come by here who said they're from Venezuela and they really want to see a change in their government. I've talked to a lot of people in Venezuela who want to see a change. They are suffering. The economic crisis is real. A lot of it is because of the sanctions, and a lot of it is because the fall of the price of oil. A lot of it is because mismanagement internally. But what we have to talk to people about is look at history. Whether it's the history of U.S. intervention in Latin America, or look what's happening in the Middle East right now. U.S. involvement in changing governments to a government they think will be more favorable to U.S. corporate interests is not good for the people. What the U.S. is trying to do now is create a civil war in Venezuela.
That's right.
That's where this is leading. And that's why it is so very urgent that we act, and we demand that our government act. You know, we have 535 elected people in Congress.
Right.
Do you know how many of them have come out and say no to a U.S. orchestrated coup in Venezuela? Six of them. But as a newly elected congressperson, Ilhan Omar, said, if you really care about the people of Venezuela, lift the sanctions. If you truly care about the people of Venezuela, stop making food and medicine scarce.
That's right.
If you truly care about the people of Venezuela, don't create and orchestrate a civil war.
All those folks who were against the war, did you love Saddam Hussein? Well, where are you? We need you, because if you don't come out now, what is going to happen is going to make everyone come out. We want to avoid that. We don't need another Iraq. We don't need another war, because the Venezuelan people are not going to go slowly. They're not going to go quietly. And we don't need you telling us how horrible Venezuela is and then saying don't intervene. It would actually be great if you just said don't intervene. Because guess what? We're not the judge and jury. The Venezuelan people do that. They do it every day. They're doing it right now. And all of that stuff you see on the media is a bunch of crap. We need to be clear that the United States has no duty, nor does it have the right to go and decide who's going to be president of another country. We don't let them do it here, supposedly, so we shouldn't let them do it in another country.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Elections. I mean, it's the height of arrogance to say to another country to give them an ultimatum for their own internal affairs. Let's face it, there is a crisis, a real crisis in Venezuela, and we need the Europeans to act like Democrats. And if they're real Democrats, what they should be saying is, we support Mexico, we support Uruguay, we support the Pope, we support all of those who are putting themselves forward to say, we will be mediators in this crisis. That's what we need, is mediation, not for the Europeans to act like they're the imperials to be dictating. Colonialism is supposed to be over. And there are two paths. One path is violence, because let's face it, Maduro and the millions of people that voted for him are not going to stand by and watch an unelected person take over and a parallel government be set up that is totally undemocratic. And there's also fear of retaliation and fear of U.S. intervention. So that path, we can see it, and it's really bloody and horrible. A civil war where the military is divided, where the U.S. might come in, because let's face it, Donald Trump in the White House has said that military intervention is on the table, and the Russians might even intervene. I mean, that would be horrific. That would be seeing in Venezuela what we're seeing right now in the Middle East.
This is really one of the most public, open coup attempts that I've ever witnessed. The U.S. obviously isn't doing anything to hide its hand. What the U.S. is trying to do, the Trump administration, is to create a pretext for escalation, and that's why they've left the U.S. diplomats there. If you remember, there were the U.S. students in Grenada that Reagan was saying were threatened, and we had to intervene there to save the students. That was obviously a fabrication. Bringing in Elliot Abrams is just, it shows that you're not even trying to hide what your agenda is. Elliott Abrams, aside from being a neoconservative fanatic whose late wife called for the genocide of Palestinians openly on her blog, Rachel Abrams, he also oversaw our death squad policy in Latin America, not just against Nicaragua and El Salvador, but also in support of Efraim Rios Montt, who committed genocide against the Mayan population. And Elliott Abrams was ultimately indicted and convicted of a felony in the Iran-Contra investigation. This is the figure that Trump has brought in to oversee a really shabby coup attempt. And I think that pretty much says everything and should really send a strong message to Democrats on Capitol Hill who reflexively threw their weight behind this coup. I'm thinking about Dick Durbin, I'm thinking about Nancy Pelosi. They are in coalition with the death squad right of Elliott Abrams, and that really is disturbing to me.